Hello, geeks, freaks, and all those unique. Emcee Frodis here. It is time for another fanfic reading. I have really become fond of doing these, so we're going to read another story today. Another one that I wrote. Since people seem to like my Kelvinverse stuff, I'll be reading another one of my Kelvinverse fics. This one is called Activities Against Regulations. And it's actually set after my fic, Fever, When You Kiss Me, which is a couple of months after Star Trek Beyond. So, you'd say that this is like maybe between 4 to 6 months after Star Trek Beyond. But summary, ever since Spock and Nyota got married, Spock has been incredibly affectionate. This level of affection has got tongues wagging around the crew. There's only one thing they keep talking about that makes Nyota upset. Life on a starship meant everyone got into each other's business. You were trapped with the same people for months, sometimes years at a time. That made every little thing that happened fodder for the gossip mill. 2 months after the fact, the biggest news was still Spock and Nyota getting married. With a crew that had been together for 4 years, there had been plenty of couples who had formed and broken up, many of them involving Chekhov. But, as Jim loved to say, they were the first couple of the Enterprise. It had just gotten worse since they had gotten married, mostly due to Spock. Vulcans liked to reinforge their marital bond through touch telepathy. It was traditional to do this with a simple uzestra, as the touching of fingers was a restrained way to show affection. Nyota didn't know if it was because he was half human or because he was Spock, but her husband was much more overt with his affection now. He didn't care who was around. He would gently stroke her back and neck or play with her hair. Once or twice he'd even kissed her on the temple. And that was just when they were on the bridge. If they were off duty, his restraint was even less. He wasn't shy about kissing her in the mess or pulling her into his lap while he played against Kirk in chess. Kirk had even teased them about it. Just how logical is it to snuggle with your wife while we're playing chess? You are in possession of visual acumen, Jim, Spock had retorted. Kirk could only shrug. Suppose you did get yourself a stunner and no one can really blame you. Nyota would have had no problem with Spock's level of affection. They really weren't too bad. It was just a bit surprising for a Vulcan. The only issue with it was how it encouraged the crew with their talk. Nyota had a very sensitive hearing. She could hear all of the whispering as she picked up her dinner tray. 10 credits it'll happen before the end of the year. That's still ages away. I bet you it happens within 3 months. Might have happened already. Doesn't she look a bit heavy around the middle? Nyota slammed her tray down at an empty table, as if to remind people she was actually in the room. A few minutes later, Spock entered the mess. He got a cup of tea and sat down beside her. Gone were the days where they sat across from each other and covertly played footsies under the table. Instead, Spock pulled her close to him, arm firmly around her midsection. He nuzzled her neck briefly. I apologize for not being ready when you left the bridge. The captain wished to discuss a change in beta shift. It's fine, Nyota sighed. Fine has variable definitions, and you are clearly using it to mean that you are upset. Spock's hand gently rubbed her side. Have I displeased you, Kadiwa? It's not you. Nyota leaned in against Spock. She really did enjoy how affectionate he'd become since their marriage. It soothed her. I really don't want to be here right now. Spock's eyebrow rose and he leaned in closer. Do you desire to go to our quarters? No, Nyota said, realizing her outburst was much too loud. She lowered her head, whispering, If we do that, people are going to think we're going to have sex. Spock tilted his head in question. Are we not going to have sex? Nyota huffed out a breath in frustration. She grabbed Spock by the front of his tunic. There were various hoots and hollers from the crew as she dragged Spock out of the mess. Once they were in the turbolift, she let him go, and she pressed the stop. Spock pinned her against the wall. "Nyota, I am receiving mixed signals from you." His eyes were dark with lust as he leaned in. "My preference is for this one." Nyota pressed a hand to Spock's chest, pushing him back. "That's not what this is, Spock. I just want to speak with you. People are talking about us." "All of the command staff are discussed by the junior crew," Spock pointed out. "Why does this bother you?" Of course Nyota knew that. It didn't make it any easier, though. "Spock, they're talking about how affectionate we are and when I'm going to get pregnant." Spock slowly shook his head. "Nyota, as a human-Vulcan hybrid, I am unable to reproduce without medical intervention. Our physical proximity has no bearing on whether or not you will become pregnant." "Not everyone knows that," Nyota sighed. Spock's brow rose again. "I am not in the habit of making my reproductive status a matter of public record." "I just don't like it." Nyota looked down, unable to meet Spock's gaze. She felt his hands on her hips, pulling her towards him. She leaned her cheek against his chest, sighing. Spock pressed his face to the top of her head. "If they are truly wagering about the potential for an offspring, I can reprimand them. Gambling is against Starfleet regulations." "No one listens to that reg," Nyota murmured into his chest. "Even Kirk is in on the pool." "It seems as if you are not bothered by their wagering." "What is bothering you?" Spock's hands were gentle against her. "Please inform me. I do not know what makes your emotional state more mysterious, that you are human or that you are a woman." Nyota pulled back. "It's just... everyone thinks now that we've gotten married, we're immediately going to have babies. Spock, I love you, but I'm only 30. I've only been serving in Starfleet for a few years. And no one is assuming that you'll leave your position to be a father. Everyone thinks little Nyota will just resign in order to pop out a few little quarter Vulcan babies." Starfleet has begun to relax the restrictions against civilians living on spaceships, as they are having more long-term deep space missions. There is no reason why, if we had a child, you would be required to leave your posting. Spock tilted her chin up to look at him. "And everyone else can say as they wish. It does not mean we have to conform to their expectations of us." "What if I don't want to have babies at all?" Nyota asked. "I might not. I don't know." Spock cupped her face. "Then we will not have offspring. Both of us are focused on our career goals. Having children is not a requirement for us to have fulfillment within our lives." Nyota closed her eyes and enjoyed the feeling of Spock's hand against her face. She could feel the warmth and affection of their bond. "But if I do want children?" "I will cherish them and teach them everything I can," Spock murmured against her lips. "Nyota, I want what you want." Nyota gave in to Spock's unspoken desire for a kiss. She sighed against his mouth. Once they pulled back, Spock gazed down at her. "With current medical advancements, you have decades before you are unable to bear children. Let us reopen discussions on this topic once we have completed this 5-year mission. Agreed?" Nyota nodded. "Agreed." Spock started up the turbolift again. "May we go have sex now?" Nyota laughed. "I never said we were going to have sex." "I believe you did." Spock grabbed her by the waist and lifted her up. Nyota wrapped her arms around his neck to keep herself steady. Her feet dangled down as Spock carried her towards their quarters. Spock stopped just before they reached the door. Nyota looked over her shoulder to see Kirk. "Big night?" Kirk asked with a leer. Spock's voice was utterly calm. "Captain, it is against Starfleet regulations to strike another officer, especially a superior." Kirk furrowed his brow. Yeah, I know that. If you do not desist flouting the regulation against Starfleet officers gambling while on ship, in regards to any potential offspring Nyota and I may have in the future, you may have some complications regarding that second regulation. Kirk sighed and nodded. So noted, Commander. Sorry. It was all in good fun. The only people who should have good fun in regards to our physical affection are Nyota and myself. Spock gave her a hungry look. Speaking of, Kirk gestured for them to go ahead, and Spock continued on towards the room. Just before they went through the door, they heard Kirk yell from down the hall. Are we allowed to keep betting on how long it'll take before someone walks in on you two getting frisky in the turbo lift? Spock paused. That is a pointless wager, Captain. Both of us are quite experienced in disabling the turbolift for the required time period. The door had just closed behind them when they heard a muffled, Wait, what? Both of them ignored Kirk as they scampered towards their bed. So, the end. I liked this story. I thought it was really cute. I really like overly affectionate Spock. Particularly, I mean, if you watch like Journey to Babel, there's lots of that attend wife going on. And I kind of like Spock being the same way, but also with some humanness to him. So him and Nyota. And I mean, like, even in the movies, like, they don't really seem to be all that shy about getting affectionate with each other. Like, I mean, they were making out in the transporter in front of people that, like, they didn't even know. Like, they barely knew Scotty. And it's just like, nah, we're gonna make out. So, I don't think that they have a lot of problems being affectionate with each other. And I like Spock being very into it. But, you know, like, people like to gossip. So I definitely think there would be lots of gossip about them having kids. And I'm very firm in my belief that Spock would require medical intervention before having any children, which nobody agrees with me on. There's so many stories about Spock having surprise kids. There's, like, actual, like, canon stories. Spock has so many kids that he doesn't actually have because of books and comics and crap like that. But yeah, I mean, he's a hybrid. I think there's going to be some difficulty in there. Considering his parents had difficulty having him, I think that he's going to have difficulty having any children, either with a Vulcan or with a human. And also, I wanted to basically, you know, write about that they, even if Nyota and Spock get married, that they don't have to have kids right away. Star Trek certainly has kind of established that people can have kids a lot later in life. I think it was Keiko O'Brien is in her 30s when her mother celebrates her 100th birthday. So, I mean, that they might not have been really, that might have been a mistake, but it's canon now. So, and certainly with the ages that people live to, I like the idea of people having, you know, longer periods of time to have kids now. And also they might not have kids. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure eventually I'll make a decision in this universe because I've written stuff in this universe up until the Next Generation era. And I have not actually said if they have kids, but I'm sure I'll come to a decision on that eventually. But I like this. I like that, you know, if Nyota's 30 and Spock is like 32, 33, they don't need to be in a rush. Not with the lifespans that people have in the Star Trek universe. So, I like them coming to that decision. I like them being frisky with each other. And, this is, you know, Kirk would definitely make that bet because Kirk yeah, I like Kirk a lot, but he is still an asshole, and he does get into people's business. If you like that, comment down below. Uh, you know, go to like my AO3, and if there's a particular story you want me to read, request it, and maybe I'll do it. I do lots of other videos on, Star Trek, Star Wars, the MCU, Supernatural, and many other geeky things. If you like to support the channel, you can go to my Patreon, or you can buy me a coffee. If you want something to wear, you can go to my TeePublic or RedBubble and buy one of my shirts. Today I am wearing my Fanfic Trope shirt. So until next time, live long, and may the Force be with you.